This is Big Man Tyrone, and you're about to watch the MtG Cabal cast with your hosts, Woad, Thirsty, and Reptar. Sub to us on all your podcast networks at MtG Cabal Cast and YouTube.
All right, guys, welcome to the newest episode of the Cabal Cast. We are here in a post-spoiler world. Stuff is kind of getting back to normal. So we decided, you know what? Time is right. We're fresh off some stores having in-person pre-release events for Core 21. Let's take a look at the future.
Yes.
So this week, we're going to cover our personal thoughts on where we see Paper Magic going in 2021.
Yep.
What it means in store, what it means at the organized play level, what that's going to look like, and what you can kind of anticipate financially, format-wise, everything.
Yep. So I was thinking about it today before we did the cast, and I don't think we're going to be as polarized in this conversation as I originally thought. Coming into the weekend, I didn't get a chance to actually talk to the LGS owners around here until late in the weekend. And hearing their thoughts on things for the last couple of years leading up to now, you know, starting with where we are and kind of moving backwards, it really appears that there have been a lot of red flags over time at the LGS level and thus the vendor level of where Paper Magic as a whole is heading. So I have an idea of where you're going to be, and I think I'm going to surprise you with where I am.
It's where I've been since we started.
Yep.
Paper Magic is on the way out. I think that, especially over the last couple months, while COVID has shut things down, and you've seen Wizards kind of adapt ways to integrate the LGS experience into Arena, into Modo, and into this online style. I think more and more that type of thing is going to become the norm. And as that happens, you'll see fewer and fewer events at the local level, at least that are for, you know, FNM, Tuesday Night Modern, Wednesday Night Modern, whatever. Rather than have a 4 to 5 night schedule, you'll see most of the LGSs dumbed down to 1 or 2 nights a week.
Yep.
And it's, you know, we're going to carve out our niche as a store. This is our EDH night. Every store is going to have one. And you know what? We're one of the only stores that fires Legacy. Let's do Legacy on our normal night because those players are loyal.
Yes.
They will use our store code on Modo when they play in Legacy events and get us revenue for not doing anything. And I think that at the LGS level especially, you're going to see more and more specialization in terms of events, with the exception of pre-releases. Everyone I talked to this weekend was like, well, you know, pre-releases are pre-releases. We've got to do them to get product.
Yeah.
It's the main way you keep your numbers up, so that's going to continue to be a thing.
And even right now, with the COVID environment that we're in, WotC is getting on the LGS to report back their numbers of either pre-orders and sales or however they're doing it. WotC just needs to know how many people did you get in, what is your allocation going to look like because of that.
And to extend that a little bit, you've had channel running events on Arena. You've had, you know, a bunch of third-party services come up to run large events on Modo for different formats. And there's been even Play EDH. The Discord is now Skype games, which has been the normal for a while for people that met each other in there. Now it's just becoming the normal for people that know each other in real life. And not that you won't go to your weekly EDH night, but basically when you get to the large scale events and you're seeing them run on Arena, you're seeing them run on Modo, you're seeing them run on Chimera, whatever third-party services, it saves Wizards and tournament organizers a lot of money to do that. And I love GPs. I think that format's incredible as a vendor, as a player. It's awesome.
Yeah.
TOs don't necessarily feel that way because it's a lot of labor. You can just have a bad event and then you're hosed.
Oh, yeah.
And
there are things that are out of TO hands that players will complain about as being a TO's fault. And you just take a pounding no matter how you slice it as a TO. You know If you run a great event, it's just going to be an okay event per the players. If something bad happens at the event that's out of your control, then you're just going to get railed.
GP Jackhammer.
GP Worcester,
Yeah.
circa Avison Restored, the DCI Center flooded. It was
Yeah.
not a rainy day. Something just burst and like swept under the gaming etc. booth. They didn't lose any products, but they were done for the weekend, early Saturday, completely out of the TO's hands.
Yeah. And then you have like Walter crashing at Vegas. I don't even know how many times at this point. These are all things that you can avoid, and lo and behold, Wizards found a way to integrate Channel's tournament organization for GPs into Arena and still honor that contract. So that's another way that you're seeing this sort of shift into a more digital world, which is kind of, I mean, when you look at how Hasbro was budgeting for WotC, when they did that earnings call last year, and they're like, hey, we're tripling our budget for Arena because that's been really good for us.
Yes.
Clearly that's where the push is going. And I think you'll still get stuff like Eternal Weekend. That Magic could be dead, and I think Eternal Weekend would still happen.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's basically Gen Con for Magic at this point.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't matter if you play Legacy or Vintage or not. Even just going is a great experience.
People will carry that torch 100%, yeah.
And I think that my expectation, in summary, for 2021, specialization at the LGS level to 2 to 3 nights where you're running the formats that you know you can fire. Far, far, far fewer physical GPs and Pro Tours. I know a number of people have spoken out about how important the gathering is to Magic.
Yep.
Saying that face-to-face social interaction, and I agree. Seeing the look of salt on my opponent's face when I tap a Winter Orb on end step to activate Urza.
Oh yeah.
Is just incredible.
Who did I have? I had a good conversation with somebody about that, about the gathering part of Magic, RE Salt, and it was very similar.
Yeah, and it's
Jason Holt.
It's as rewarding as that stuff is. Hasbro, at the end of the day, is running the show. It's not Wizards of the Coast anymore. It's still Wizards of the Coast, an entity owned by Hasbro, but at the end of the day, they're beholden to Hasbro's shareholders. And what gives them more profit in terms of actual margin? I think Arena, without them disclosing their full numbers, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to try to push that and ride that gravy train. So I fully expect to see more and more, we gave Legacy the axe. We're probably going to give Paper Modern the axe before too long. And then we've got Pioneer and Standard and Limited. And those are the only formats that we're going to run Pro Tours in. And
Historic, not Pioneer.
Yeah, Historic.
Because Pioneer's not a moto yet.
Yeah. You know where you can do all of that? Arena. And if it happens where Pioneer does eventually get added or something similar, cool.
Yeah.
That infrastructure is already there, and they're already transitioning. I'm not saying we'll see the complete elimination of paper events in 2021, but I expect that we will see a drastic decrease in the number of events, which means for vendors, fewer buys, higher costs.
Yes.
And, well, not necessarily higher costs, but you have to pay more to be competitive because you're dealing with an online buy list.
Yeah.
And I think you'll see a lot of vendors who don't adapt to that quickly, that may be mainstays at the GP scene, fall off the wayside.
I agree with a very high percentage of that overall. After talking to managers, etc., like I said this weekend, my initial thought was that prior to these conversations, we would actually have no paper Magic played in 2021 at the Magic Fest, the Mythic Championship, or the SCG level. They would just cut it loose for 2021. And that we would also see any kind of resurgence in Pioneer die down for Historic, because that's what's being supported. So if anything did come up in the meantime, we would lose Pioneer. After those conversations, though, I can tell you that the niche FNM and the niche Magic Night thing is absolutely an LGS model. It's what I've had up here for over a decade, and that is something I do agree with. it's very difficult for an LGS to survive on just Magic players alone, so you have to diversify, and thus my LGSs have done so. One night is EDH. I think Wednesday night was split draft and board game demo night. Tuesdays was actual tabletop, meaning like 40K or some spin-off of that.
Normal Hordes, whatever.
Exactly. Thursday was nothing, and then Friday was F&M. Saturdays and Sundays were reserved for whatever events they might have. I can tell you that model works, and it allows you to go wide, which is what you need to do as an LGS to survive. You need to serve as many clients as you possibly can, and going tall on Magic does not do that. That just means you fall faster if something like the removal of paper play were to happen. I don't really consider play at the LGS level in 2021 an overall factor. People are going to do it if they can. Every state and every area is a little bit different. We were looking really good up here up until students came back, and then so many thousands of people from out of state flooded, so our COVID numbers skyrocketed. But we were headed to a point where we could have actually had F&Ms come back within the next couple of weeks, if not for this. So I really don't want to say anything about that into 2021 at the LGS level. So what changed my thinking about the paper scene in 2021 and why I do think we will get a little bit back is because we're going to see a paradigm shift in what actually happens in paper Magic at a large scale event level. I don't know how Star City Games is going to survive on an arena model only.
Yeah, I don't think they can.
The first level of events, you win store credit, and if you're only playing arena, that supposes that they're going to come back for paper, or they're just going to sell you EDH cards. So they might just change their model over to be EDH, and refocus and do kind of what some other vendors are doing, which is go hard on that, like we've talked about in the past.
Yeah.
But I do think we will see some Magic Fests, and what I think the paradigm shift is going to be is that we will get the actual convention air that WotC wants to give off at these Magic Fests, and we won't actually see constructed Magic Fests in 2021. It'll be conveniently, limited the entire way through, because it's very easy to get people to come in and play those events when you need to bring nothing with you aside from cash in hand, essentially. You paid for it ahead of time, or whatever. And coming out of 2021, I think that's the paradigm shift where we are now looking at conventions however many times a year, but they're going to be mainly limited, just like 2021 will be, and the side events will be where you play your constructed formats. And it'll be left to those people. That still gives vendors and players the opportunity to do what they're going to do, and as long as your sets are good for limited, unlike Dominaria, then you will still bring in a large number of people to these events, because it does pander to the largest audience possible. You don't have to do one every week, every month. You can break it out if you do want to have that convention kind of air, but I think that's where we're going to go in 2021, is we'll begin to see this changeover. And that kind of came out of the model that WotC has put forth for paper play for the last couple of years. In talking with them, a number of my LGSs divested from singles well before the MSRP model was removed, and they said starting there, with the removal of the MSRP, the removal of a lot of lead time for products, it seemed like WotC was just stepping back from the printing process and just going to figure out a way to print enough paper cards to sate demand to meet what little paper play will be left by the time they're done with their digital products, and making that the way to play. I think this just kind of accelerated everything.
And I think that's something we talked about before, is kind of like more of a living card game model. And I like that you touched on going more the convention route, because when they announced Mythic Fest, that was what they wanted. Mm-hmm. And since then, they haven't really done a lot to do that.
No.
But like you said, if you were to have a limited event there and bring a bunch of like vendors, artists, stuff like that, well, then all of a sudden you can have like pastimes there running EDH events. Mm-hmm. Wizards or whoever running limited.
Yes.
And you break it up, and that can help obviate costs a little bit for everyone if everyone's got their own little piece, similar to Gen Con.
Yep, and WotC can take over some of the large independent events, like they wanted to take over Eternal Weekend from Card Titan and brand that a Magic Fest.
Yeah.
Now you have that Wizards wrapping around the event finally, not to legitimize it, because that is a very legitimate event, but it just kind of brings it back under the umbrella, brings it home, so to speak.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that is also a model I could see them going with. And, like, those events are where you get the product.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
The LGSs still have it, and they have access to it, but similar to, Dragon Con, the Nalanthe Dragon debacle of, you have to go here to get this.
Yeah.
Well, when the pre-release for Modern Masters was at Vegas, remember how popular that was? That's something they could also do to try to drum up that model as well.
Exactly.
I digress. Sorry, continue.
No, it's just interesting because the more you look at it, the more it makes sense, because we've talked a number of times of, like, you can't just keep running Vegas every year. You can't keep running it back. People are going to stop going. You lose the pomp and circumstance that is that event. You need a big... If you want a destination event, you got to pick a new destination, or you have to not run it every year.
Yeah.
But if you scale back the number of events overall and actually work on that convention field, like they kind of did at Vegas, but everything was so sequestered because of the way the room was set up, then you can actually run Vegas back every year.
Yeah.
But the convention part of it just needs to be there. And they can start looking at... somebody on Twitter brought up the photos of PAX Prime circa Battle for Zendikar, where it had the Ulamog arms coming out of the building, crushing a cop car. You can go back to doing big things like that again a couple times a year for your flagship events and bring people in. You don't need large TOs to run these events again. WotC can actually create a division for it if they want to in-house it and take control of everything. That's on them. And that still allows the LGS to do what they need to do at the local level to keep people interested in playing the game in store. Buy the products in store. Buy your singles in store. The gathering can happen at the store still. But to me, because that's such an individual level, I do expect that to happen. I just want to separate that out from 2021. I did actually find out only, I think it was last week, through EDH Rec, their podcast, about what you're talking about in regards to the EDH Discord that was going on, and the actual EDH event, the Command Fest style event that was being hosted on Discord, where you would just I don't know if it was Channel Fireball or somebody else. They spent a long time setting up Discord and the bots, so you would just throw out a direct challenge command. It would put four people together, give you a room number in not Chimera, but something else, because the room was already waiting for you. You just go into that application, which is completely third party. It had all the cards already. You just imported your list, type in your room number, and you were just matched with those other people, and you just jam. And it ran flawlessly.
I think that when you can have third-party software like that runs that event better than Walter, it emphasizes the need for, like, the third-party, the community to run that and headline that.
Yeah.
And I think that, similar to how Eternal Weekend is entirely a community event. Mm-hmm. Wizards has nothing to do with it. They put it together. That is what I think you're going to see more of. Coming the next year.
Command Fests at the recent Mythic Magic Fests, and you just kind of have this interesting situation where you essentially set up you have your main event, and then you have sides, not as you know them, but something similar. You just have what is effectively the game room, where people can either go in and just throw down wherever they want, or they can jump in an 8-person pod, and it's just handled by a local store or maybe another TO, whatever you want. But it is effectively, it's in the same room but detached from the main event.
Yeah.
Then you just get to enjoy yourself either way you want. That's where I see Paper Magic moving, and in all honesty, I'm fine with that, especially as a vendor, because it does the exact same thing, which is just bring people into a room to play Magic and interact with each other and with me as a vendor. That's how I'll move my cardboard at any point in time. You mentioned pre-releases, and I don't think those change. I mean, they will once we can go out and play them physically, but I think pre-releases are exactly going to be the same. The era of the PTQ, and just like the GPT, that's a bygone era. We're done with that. Gone. You'll do everything. You'll qualify for everything on Arena like you are now. I don't think we're going to see that really come back in any way, shape, or form.
No, I think that the one thing that is more like, I think the pre-release and its existence in Magic is essential to Magic, because it is, it's how new players start often, and it gives old players a like throwback to when they were younger and it was new. Yeah. And it's even the most competitive players I know that just grind for the Pro Tour love pre-releases, and I think those will never change no matter what happens until Paper Magic dies.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But it is quintessential Magic. Is kind of why you can't escape the pre-release. I believe if you go and you read the Wikipedia entry for Magic the Gathering, you'll find out that in its heyday, at some point, Magic the Gathering was meant to be played while you were waiting on a line. It's one of those games in a long lineage, and so the idea of Jumpstart actually harkens back as well. You just get a thing, you open the thing, you play the thing, you're done with the thing. And every time you open your packs, it's something brand new. You have to figure out how to play the cards you were given. It's just quintessential Magic. You can't get rid of it. That's part of the reason why I think changing the model of the Magic Fest to limited only is where we're going to see things happen. It also saves face when it comes to like the secondary market and how expensive things are. When you remove all those large events that people prepare for, it calls the need for a lot of that stuff, and you see a lot of those complaints die because people no longer have to grind the format and find the best version of the deck that they love. You could do it all on Moto. It'll be cheap. The end. That's where you host that. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's future we're looking at.
Yeah. And, from a finance standpoint, it just harkens everything we've been talking about since we started. Just EDH finance. That's all we are right now. You can look at reserve list stuff. You can look for low-hanging fruit, anything under 20. You can pick it up if you want. Sure, Wallach Help might be worth something eventually because, Rising Tide.
Seconds Unsealing.
Yeah, I know. That was a good conversation. I wish I recorded that as our entry.
God. We'll be back. It'll get there.
I'm sure it will. It can't be. Or it can't not be. It's too good. It really is just, EDH finance and long-term value from there. You just have to pick your strategy from that. Do you want to short-term flip or do you want long-term holds? And if you want long-term holds, then you have to expect that at some point you might get hit by mystery booster style product, Jumpstart, whatever it is. That you got to be okay with. With taking your losses and know your outs and your timelines. The timeline will be the most important part of finance from here on out, especially when it comes to EDH stuff. But at least you have an idea that you're only going to get hit maybe like 2 times a year realistically. I don't think we're going to see a 4 EDH product year again for a long time, and that's the yearly Commander deck, Mystery Booster, Jumpstart, and the draft set. I'm all counting as Commander product for this year. That the mono green thing I don't count, and then the Commander decks, any Commander product that we see with Zendikar, I count in the yearly deck as well.
Yeah.
Because it shorts 2 more decks, but we knew they were coming. It's not a surprise. I don't think we're going to get like another 2 or 3 Master Set year again. That's a little irksome. But
yeah,
this is where we live now. This is the house wants to build.
Being on EDH, specs? Picks? Picks.
I mean, what are picks if not specs?
Yeah.
All right. I honestly thought for a hot second that you picked a card that I've been watching for a couple of weeks.
Nope. Well, maybe.
No, you didn't. It was a card I'm not terribly familiar with either of these. I read this one. I was like, oh yeah, this thing, not the one I've been tracking, but yours.
So I went with, and it's one that I'd mentioned in a previous episode.
Yes.
Branching Evolution. Why now when pre-orders are still $30? Because I can't do it the weekend after release to tell you to keep an eye on it on release day. The day Jumpstart releases, keep your eye on TCG Player. Mm-hmm. At around 3 to 5 p.m. Central, whatever that is, wherever you are in the world, you'll hit your low on release cards. I fully expect Branching Evolution to be Unbound Flourishing style sub $5. Buy as many copies as you can get your hands on. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, this is...
It's $3 to $5. The windmill slam all day. I will take every copy I can get. As I touched on, in the previous episode, this card is EDH solid gold everywhere forever.
Yep.
It's situational doubling season. I guess Parallel Evolution, I think, is the one that's similar.
We talked about this. Yeah, it's like there's a tiering of cards that do the exact same thing essentially, and it just puts counters on your creatures. Yeah, doubling season might double your planeswalkers or some other hoo-ha here and there, but in reality, you're just making some big all monsters.
Yeah, you're just doubling something, and that effect, thanks doubling season, is never not worth money.
Mm-hmm.
Added to the fact that we're seeing a production delay, shortage, whatever you want to call it, simply due to COVID and factories being closed.
Yeah.
This is, like, in my opinion, a doubly sure thing, or as close to a sure thing as it can get.
Yes.
Because low supply will eventually be absurd demand.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, you got to watch out for the reprint bug, but Wizards, despite the constant reprints, haven't really touched mid to high financially viable cards yet within a year or two of their release. Sarkhan's Unsealing is a bulk rare. It'll continue to be a bulk rare, but we'll get there again.
Yeah, to be fair, I'm going to bring this card up so people can see on stocks. Primal Vigor came out in Commander 2013, and that card's just been floating along as a solid pickup and only gets better over time. It ages like a fine wine.
Yep.
And this is another one of those cards in that tier that I mentioned earlier. So to track is a surefire thing. You can see it was slow growth until recently when we just got like infinite counter stuff in Ikoria. But Branching Evolution is going to follow the same long-term plan.
And that's why I think it's, that day, get in for as much as you possibly can.
Yep. Yeah. I already did my little bit of pre-release pickup.
Nice.
So, yes, Conspicuous Snoop is still a little too expensive for my blood to go tall on, so instead I found out CK was selling some foil alt art core 2021 cards for like 40% of TCG market, so I just...
Sure.
Yeah, I just ate them up.
Yeah.
Yeah, took a little while to sort out with one of our data pulls, but once I got there, it was just really obvious. My pick, also EDH, just a card I kept forgetting to pay attention to, is Revel in Riches. It's a black enchantment from Ixalan that is an alt win con in black, which is very difficult to come by. Win cons, no. Alt win cons, yes. And basically it just requires that you have 10 treasures in play at the beginning of your upkeep. Yeah, I just want to make sure it was 10. Now, I brought up the stocks graph for this card, and you can see there was a very strong dip and then a rebound. That dip is because this was not only in mystery boosters, but also in promo packs, right? So we have 2 additional printings, and everything has recovered. The mystery booster price, it hit high, probably close to where the actual Revel was, so close to $5, then just dropped to like 2, but the slope on it is positive. It's not a rope, it's just a very, very slow or small slope. Watching this card for quite some time, I know I've been tracking some data on this one. So right now, CK's buying them at about the same amount that they were last week, but the quantity they are buying is much higher. They're buying 42 now compared to the 20-some they were last week. That number has come down from 56 over the weekend, and it did have a high of $2 in cash. Right now it's $160 cash, so people have been dumping to the CK buy list, but they're still buying a decent amount, right? So and this is only the set numbers. It's all I'm looking at. I'm not looking at any other version of this card. Set only. So people are buying and selling this card. Fairly liquid. The delta, not that great. It's like a $2 delta. The TCG market when I picked up was about $3.50. It's still holding. So, at $1.50 in terms of cash, and is it about for credit. That's not really the greatest delta, but give it time. You get in now, you give this time, and you just sit on it and let it age. It will pick back up and it'll head towards that $5 mark pretty quickly. We're not seeing a lot of additional mystery booster product hit right now. We are supposed to get more, but just like everything else from Ikoria forward, Carta has to be printing a set and a supplemental at the same time. They can't do one and then the other. That is literally what they're doing. They just have very protracted periods to do all of this, so we're not getting all the product that we should have at each release. We'll get there eventually. It will be stepped out. So there is a chance that mystery boosters just do stop. We just don't get any more of this, and that is when most likely this card will just pick back up a little more aggressively than it would normally. I like this as an EDH card because it just costs 1 black. So it can go in literally any deck that can cast a black spell, and being an alt win con, triggering when a creature dies means it can go in any black deck. You don't have to be slow in plotting control, which is kind of what you see when you actually look at Revel in Riches as a card on EDH Rec. You just see a lot of controlling commanders across the board, and you can actually put this in something a little more aggressive, a deck, because creatures will die naturally. There's just a standard attrition. Or the interesting thing is you can actually play this as a counter comp to control.
Yeah.
So you can just drop Revel in Riches, and as your control opponent just takes care of the board naturally, you get closer and closer and closer to winning. Works well with Dockside Extortionist. If you play red, you can almost combo kill in that regard. Or if you're playing any kind of black deck with Cabal Coffers, there is the opportunity for you just slam Revel, Damnation, pass turn, and see if you just untap and win. So this card is, I think, underrepresented right now in how many decks are playing it, because I think more people should be playing it, and once they realize how good this card is, they either see it in play or it just starts to tick up a little more aggressively and it hits stocks, or it comes up in more EDH content, more videos, then people will flock to this card. And that would make it a more short to midterm hold. Right now I'm looking at this card in a mid to long term hold, because I think there will just be natural demand for this card over time, and it will just go back up to 5 and then again towards 10, unless for whatever reason this gets printed in another standard set.
I also think that it's interesting because it's... Personally, I think cards from Ixalan and that era are kind of low reprint risks because of the recency of what a bad standard we had from Shadows, Kaladesh, War of the Spark, and I think Wizards, pure speculation here, is somewhat reluctant to reprint some of those cards because of the association with that time period. And because they're trying to move on from, ham-fisted, we're banning something every set. They're still there. But trying to get away from that. So I think that the reprint risk for something like Revel in Riches, which is lower in power level in a vacuum than something like Aetherworks Marvel, and has a lower exposure because Ixalan just wasn't... It was overshadowed by the sets on either side with Dominaria and Kaladesh, and we'll just forget about Hour and Amonkhet. And I think this is a solid pickup. Like you said, I'd be more mid to long term as well myself.
Thinking about the reprint equity on this, it's not that it's not just because it was Ixalan that makes it low. It's also kind of a thematic card. This is the first set where they truly leaned into pirates. Yeah, sure, they were on Mercadia when we were there in Masks block, but this is the first time they just leaned in. Okay, so we're getting pirates from here on out. So if you want to bring back a card like this and not just have it be some weird standout thing, you have to be able to create treasure. So you've got to have something else that does this. So you're looking at like maybe a heavier goblin theme, which is fine. We have cards like Dockside Extortionist. It's a goblin that just makes a ton of treasures. You're not going to get a card like Brass's Bounty because that's tied to Lord Admiral Beckett Brass from Ixalan. Unless they bring that character back, a non-planeswalker, random cannon character, sure, why not?
Yeah.
Or you move it to something like Dragons, a clan that's, again, notorious for hoarding wealth, and then this card kind of slots in there. If you don't do that, you just shoehorn a card into set, and they're awkwardly thematic at times.
Yeah.
And I'll cite Triskaidekaphobia. as a good example of that. That card is utter nonsense.
Yeah.
But it is incredibly thematic to Innistrad.
It is.
Revel in Riches is thematic to that kind of gathering of wealth, that accruing of wealth, and to do that, you need a reason to do that. You need to bring this card back and put it in a tribe or put it in a theme that just kind of works out. If I saw this come back, I would honestly expect it in a Master set more so than a Commander set, because again, you would have to do the same thing. You got to create treasures for a reason. They can't just be killing creatures. That's just too ham-fisted to reprint this. Or you would have to dedicate, like I said, this card to a theme in an upcoming set, and I just don't see that happening either.
Yeah,
so
I don't think so. I think Pirates we visited, we're moving on.
100%, and we'll just get them from here on out. Naturally, people are okay with it, just like with Colossal Dreadmaws in every set. Why not? Why not?
That's dumb.
Look, I was all in on the Colossal Dreadmaw box topper troll. I was in on that. That was good.
God, that would have been great.
I would have bought it, hands down.
Same.
It's a good troll. But yeah, I think that I'm going to wrap up this week. I think we covered a lot of ground. You know, there's a lot to think about when it comes to what's going to happen with paper in 2021, and again, we did discuss the financial impact of that. But I think this is now the time where you really have to kind of pick your lane more so than before. Straddling is not really going to get you anywhere that you want to go. You need to decide what you want to do. I've also heard collection buying is becoming pretty difficult in a lot of places.
It is,
and
the number of buys I have sourced has gone way up recently because GP vendors don't have the access.
Yeah, so going out of your way to do that, it's a little more difficult. You have to compete with Facebook and everything else now. So if you want to move in on EDH, collections is generally a good place to start, especially from local players. But if that's the format that everybody's moving to, that's going to be a little difficult. But you can definitely pave your way if that's the niche you want to fill.
Yep, for sure.
But unless you have any parting notes,
all
right. We are at Halt I Am Reptar and
at Thirsty Sizzler,
and we are at MtG Cabalcast on Twitter, Facebook, Patreon, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube.
Yes, those are the ones.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in, guys.
We'll see you next week.